We have learned some basic concepts on controller. You may have noticed that I removed a line of code that was using the provider, and it is for a good reason. In this video, I will explain some basic concept of provider. Provider is a good concept that allows you to separate concerns between HTTP request or response and your application logic. Generally, you can have your logic inside this provider, but it is not limited to that alone. Let us take a look into NestJS documentation. At this point, you may begin to understand how important it is to go through the documentation. I will highlight several key concepts that you need to grasp here. You can see that the main idea is to inject dependencies, so they will have relationship with each other, and we let the wiring process to be handled by NestJS itself. A provider is simply a class annotated with an injectable decorator. So they provide a diagram, but to better understand what a provider is, we need to write a code. So in my last application, you can see that I removed some test controller up here, and I simplify some of my endpoint here. So let's say I want to create a user registration. Let's say I want to post, and I will create my function as register user, and then return maybe the username or something. So let's say I want to return whatever payload I have. Now in get, previously we can use param, and it can be payload or it can be name, and this value is based on this parameter here. Sorry. Now let's say for in case of post, I can remove this here, and I will be using body. Again, I will auto import this from NestJS command. You can see that it is up here now. I will add braces, and then again I will use payload. This payload can be anything, but it will be object. I can save this, and I can head over to my postman. I have updated my postman, so I will remove this one here, and let's say I use this endpoint localhost :3000 as the port, and I will pause. And for the body, I will use this value here. I will click on raw, and the type will be JSON. Let's say I will pass in name, my name, and then age will be let's say 24 years old. I send this payload. You can see that it is returning the same value. Let's say if I send as 25, it will be 25, and the same goes on and on. The reason is because how do I say, I am giving response based on what I have sent on the request. So I send the request of payload, and this is what I get back. Now let's take a look inside the code itself. Let's say if I want to register user and add them to a club, if or simple logic will be add them to high school or kindergarten. So add to high school. In Malaysia, if you are 13 years old, you will be add to high school. Let's say age. I will use payload itself. Console.log adding user to high school, and then the name, payload the name. I'll do the same for kindergarten. Add to kindergarten. Maybe the age should be 7 years old, less than 7 years old. It will be add to kindergarten. So console.log adding to kindergarten, and then payload.name, and I will add some validation here. If payload dot, you can see that I don't know what my payload is, and we will do some fix on that. So let's assume I can have age, or maybe h1 to 3 or something, h2 or h3, I don't know at this point, but we will fix that. So payload age, if payload age is if payload.age is more than or equal to 13, I will add him to high school. This dot add to high school my payload. Return payload again. Else what happened, I will add this guy, add to kindergarten, and then payload. Let's see this thing in action. Save it first, fire up our postman, and see what happened if I put the age as 14 years old. So I know I get the response like this, but where do I stand? Is it high school or kindergarten? And you can see at this point I am being added to I'm being added to high school. And then let's say if my age is 7 years old, I receive the same response only with different age, but I am being added to kindergarten. Now it might not be the best logic, but you get the idea. And then after this, let's say I want to know what other payload will be. I can add an interface. So export interface. This will be register user interface. Game same as my payload, I will have name and age. Name will be of string, and age will be of number. So let's assign this value to our payload here. You can see that I receive error return is not of this type. So we ignore that first. I'm going to point out this one previously. If I click on dot, if I type in dot, previously it doesn't show me anything as suggestion. So if I click dot right now, you can see that I have several properties here, name and age. Interestingly, this is being how do I say, this is being pointed out from this here, register user interface. So again, how do we solve this payload? So it says here register user interface is not assignable to type string. So this payload here is register user interface, but we are returning a string. So to solve this, we return it as register user interface. Right, let's try to save this and try to run. And I expect my name to be added to kindergarten. Now there's a lot of logic here, but let's take a look at what controller was. We learned this in the previous video. Controllers are responsible for handling incoming requests and returning response. It didn't say here about any logic or anything, but the thing that we want to do is putting this thing inside a provider. I already have app service here. This was from the generating new project previously, and then I will add this thing here. I will cut this and put this guy inside here, and also I can copy this thing and put it here. So I don't need this decorator anymore. This is not a controller, but it is more of a provider. And then we don't need this. I think it's better to be put inside this service here. So I have this register user interface, and then I save it, and this guy here will have a lot of error. So how do I solve this? This is where provider comes in. I can use constructor private read only app service. This is my variable name, and it is being referred to app service. Notice this is a class, and this is my variable name. I can name it as app or anything. Let's say app service 1, so we are not being confused here. And then I will add the curly braces since this is a constructor. Then this to app service 1, we can see this dot app service 1 dot. We have several functions here. Maybe I don't want to expose add to high school, add to kindergarten. I just want this. These two here are not supposed to be exposed. What I will do here is I will make this as private. Then here, when I try to press dot, I can only see the method that I can only access. Now I will send this payload here. Now here I will import it. It throws me error because it expects me to return something, and I haven't written anything yet. So I will simply return this, and it should solve the issue. Now let's take a look here. Everything's actually the same, but we separate the constant. Our controller only handle request and response, but the business logic is being handled here. So I'm going to save this guy here and I'm going to save the service. Let's see if there's any error. We will try to fix. So there's no error. We see that we have get and post. And then if I try to postman again with the same value, I should get this value here. This is from the interface, and I'm being added to kindergarten because my age is less than 13. Now let's see how actually it's being run normally without provider. Let's say if I don't have provider, how am I going to run this? What I will do is constant app service is equal to new app service. This is a pretty basic concept we learned in object-oriented programming. What I did is I create a new instance of app service. Now app service here dot register user. If I press Control and click on this variable, click on this method, it will bring me to this method here. Then again, this error, I simply need to return. If you are still confused with TypeScript, you can ignore this part as well. It doesn't matter, but it will help a lot in the long term, which I will show in the future. Alright, now let's see here what are we doing right actually. First, we create a constant and we create an instance of app service. So this is a new object of app service, and then app service.register user here. But why previously we don't have to declare this new app service? I can explain in a pretty simple term. Is, let's say I try to demonstrate again, private app service 1 app service. Right, let's say here I have this, and whenever the controller detects that inside the constructor, I inject this new value here, private app service is equal to this guy here, which is the app service that we have created. Now the magic comes in here. We can look into documentation again. The keyword here is wiring up. So we allow NestJS runtime system to actually do the instance creation for us. So this part here is being handled by NestJS. That's the beauty of it. This whole concept is called dependency injection. Now somewhere on top, this is a pretty basic code here, but somewhere on top NestJS actually have an IOC which is called inversion of controller. Inversion of controller. Let me check back. I believe it's inversion of control. Inversion of control. Okay, sorry, my bad with English. Now this inversion of control is the part that's actually going to instantiate everything for you. So what you will do is you need this one here, the variable name, and also what type is it. Say our case, this is app service. Now this part here I can just remove. I can use this. If I press control and click on here, it will be pointed to here. Now why did we do something like this? What's the benefit of it? First, you don't have to keep on declaring a lot of things. You don't have to instantiate most of the thing, but at some point you need to. There are certain cases. This NestJS framework is actually a singleton. So in our case, let's say to understand what a singleton is, maybe I can create a separate video for this for advanced. But let's say if I have a variable called user, and this user will be an empty array. So whenever I register this user, either it is a high school student or kindergarten student, I will add them to the list of users. So this user.push and payload.name. So at this point you might be wondering if we can use database or not, but since this is a singleton, I will show you the benefit of it as long as your application is running. So that's the keyword. You need to keep that in mind. So whenever I register a user, the name will be pushed inside this user. It will be pretty complex thing at first, but let's see. If I want to get user, I will simply return this to user. Now I have this one here. Instead of get hello, we can do some more better thing, maybe get user. You can start to see some pattern here. So this .app service .get user. You notice that this variable is being declared here. It's not supposed to. One way to handle that is make this private, and it should solve. So again, let's try to press dot here, type dot here, and I will never see user again because it is private only to that app service. Let's say I solve this first, and I'm not returning string. At this point, I don't know what I'm going to return yet. But if we check back here, I can hint it to be, let's say, I want to return a string array. So again here, I simply type in string array. So in this part here, you can expect I will return an array of string. We save this guy here, and then back to our postman. Again, make sure the app is running. I will show you why. First of all, I'm going to register Sam. He is maybe 14 years old, considered as high school. Sam. And then again, I will register maybe Michael. He's 15 years old, again a high school student. Now you can see that here I've created a lot of user. But how do I get the user? I can copy this endpoint here using get and paste it here, try to run. I have Sam and Michael, but how do I know this? I'm not using any database. That's the power of singleton. That's the power of singleton. So this value here, remember when I say const, oops, did I miss something? Okay. Remember when I say const app service equal to new app service. So the equivalent of this is app service dot register user, name will be name Sam, age equal to 13, I think he was. Then app service.register user name is equal to Michael, and I set him as, I think he was 15 years old. And then along this path here, when I do something like this, behind the scene, app service dot, what was it, which was private, dot user dot push, we will push this value. The same thing happened for our value here. We'll keep on pushing whenever you call register, and when I type in app service dot get user, we will get this whole value here. Now I don't have to actually write a lot of complex code like this. I can just remove it and it will be a one line, and this value here will always be instantiated, but it will be instantiated only once. It's not the best solution for storing your record, but when we are testing something like this, this is the perfect example, and you can understand what a singleton is. So a singleton is basically an application that's being instantiated once, to the best of my knowledge, and you can actually use the whole instance of it. This app service here, this value here, will always be declared once. So let's say I'll console.log this .app service. No, I don't need this. I think I can directly call this app service if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so whenever I start the application, you can see that this value is being called here on instantiation. Before everything else, you see, before everything else, somewhere in the middle, NestJS is doing its magic using singleton. So let's see if I try to click send here. Is it going to run app service again? No, because this constructor only being called once for runtime. So whenever I let's say if I try to terminate this, Ctrl C to terminate, press Y and try to run again. After it has been run, you can see that again only at the first line here it will be declared, because in a singleton a constructor is being called only once. So let's say if I try to get value here, previous we have Sam and Michael. If I try to click send again, it's empty because I closed the application. Okay, I hope that I don't overcomplicate some of the terms, but to recap, a provider is a class that is being used here like this, and it has an add injectable decorator. You can use any logic that you want. It doesn't have to be this complicated, or it can be as complicated as it can, but it should stick to what the purpose is. So maybe this app service here, the purpose of the whole thing is to register user and handle user. So it will only do that. So I'm not going to like drive to work. Drive to work is not part of school here. Okay. All right. We have learned injectable, we have learned provider, and if you want to create a provider, it's pretty simple. Let's say here nest g service, and then whatever the service that you want. Let's say rocket here. I tried to experiment something before, and it will create a new folder here with a service of rocket. Or for alias, you can use NestJS and then the class name that you want. It will automatically prepend the value of service. So you can see I don't have to type in NestJS rocket dash service or something. Will do that for me. Now I don't need this, so I'm going to remove this thing here. Move to recycle bin, and be sure inside your app module also you remove this thing. You notice that it will be automatically created for you. Then I will save this, and inside my node terminal I don't have to see an error anymore. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we will take a look into the module concept itself. So stay tuned.